Welcome everyone to the first segment we have of Game Talk. Now this is a new segment we're doing for Closing Staff Podcast. The reason for that is because a lot of us we tend to be pretty busy outside of our normal recording, and these guys also tend to go MIA during this time around October to January. I think we mentioned that in one of the previous podcasts. So the idea behind Game Talk is we choose a subject, a game we want to talk about, and not everybody that is part of the podcast has to be here, has to be present to talk about it. For instance, I'm Tradehold, and I'll be talking about Yakuza today. But if, let's say, Distro wanted to talk about his own subjects, then he can have his own guests, and I wouldn't have to be present. Or if Cash Rap also wanted to talk about his own games, or maybe just do like a horror segment, then he can do that himself. So with that out of the way, again, we're going to be talking about Yakuza. I have some friends with me today, some online friends, who are also somewhat fans of Yakuza. I wouldn't call myself a hardcore fan myself, but I also try to have some people who are, more casual fans and maybe not as obsessed, I guess you can say, so that we have different perspectives. So let me introduce you to some of my friends here. First, we have Swaz, who is I would say you're a new fan, right, Swaz?
Yeah, I think I played the first one like 2 years ago.
Okay, and then the thing about Swaz too is that he is not only from out of state, he's actually from out of the country, in multiple ways, right? You don't have to mention it, but you don't have to mention which country or anything like that. But on top, you're not native to the country you live in, which is not in the U.S.
Nope.
And then I have another friend here, Cyrus, who is out of state.
Hello.
And then Cyrus you've been a long time fan, but you're more of a casual fan, yeah, of Yakuza?
Yeah, that's accurate.
So
I've been playing since PS2, but I played it here and there, missed a few entries of the series, but I'm trying to catch back up.
And understandably, you don't remember all the characters. I'm pretty sure that's the same with Swaz.
Yeah, I probably forgot more than I remember.
I'm glad if I can remember the main characters.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you know Kiryu Kazuma.
Yes. I'm good with that part.
Okay, well, the reason we're talking about Yakuza is because, we have a Yakuza Like a Dragon coming out next month, in November 10th, which is going to be more RPG turn-based type play style. But before that, what entry did you start with, and how did you kind of become a fan of the series? Let's start with Cyrus.
Oh, well, I started with Yakuza 1 way back in the day.
On the PS2?
On the PS2, actually, yes. What made me a fan? I really liked the way that they told the story. It was very realistic and grounded, and the gameplay kept me interested, of course, but the story is what really kept me going through the game and the series as a whole.
I think, Swaz, you said that you had only started 2 years ago?
Yeah, so the only reason I got into it is Kiwami 1 was free on PS Plus.
Mm-hmm.
So I just downloaded it and I had it on my system for ages. And I thought, might as well just give it a go. Because I know that you're a huge fan.
Yeah.
So I thought let's see what this is all about. And yeah, I loved it. It was so much fun. I think I especially just liked how badass Kiryu was. And it was just great just to see that. So then I played 0 and I played Kiwami 2.
Which is great. Well, yes. I can say that the Yakuza 2 is fantastic. I still haven't played the Kiwami yet, which is why I can't say that I'm a hardcore fan.
Yeah.
Well, Cyrus was already touching on this a bit, but what would you say is the most appealing part about Yakuza? What makes people really get into the series? Either one of you want to start first. Let's go with Cyrus.
Okay. Repeat the question again, sorry.
Okay. Well, I was just asking, what do you think is the most appealing part of Yakuza? What draws people to really become fans of the game?
Oh, well, honestly, if you're a fan, if you like your games with a good story that's well fleshed out, something easy to follow, but still interesting all the same, then yeah, I would definitely say give Yakuza a shot, because, you're playing a movie. It's got a solid plot. Dialogue is on point, and there's a little something for everybody. There's action, drama, comedy. Can't really go wrong with it.
What about you, Swaz?
So I think for me it was mostly the characters. Like Kiryu, for example, if you're ever like gonna wonder what he's gonna do next, all you have to do is think like, what's the most badass course of action, and then that's probably what Kiryu's gonna do. And there's also like Majima, who's also like just a hilarious and really fun character with some occasional unexpected deep moments. I think that's what's really like got me into the series more than anything.
You started with Kiwami too, right? Not Zero?
I started with Kiwami 1, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I always tell people, I used to tell people, start with Kiwami, because if you start with Zero, you might like Majima a lot, because it gives more of an edge towards Majima's story, since he doesn't get as much exploration in the later games. But it might bum you out, because once you start with Kiwami 1, you'll find that you'll basically only be playing with Kiryu throughout the whole series. Now it's more like, you know what, I think even if you start with Zero, then even if there's that initial disappointment when you start playing one that you won't be playing with Majima, you still will grow to like really like Kiryu as well. But what do you guys think? Like, let's start with the Swaz, since you actually started with Kiwami 1 before you actually played Zero. What do you think? Do you think it's best to start with Zero, or actually it was better for you just starting off at Kiwami 1?
So I think from like a story or character perspective, I'm not sure if it makes a huge amount of difference, but I definitely think starting with Kiwami 1 was better, because I think Zero came out later, didn't it? And I think the gameplay in Zero was a bit more polished.
Mm-hmm.
So I think going from Zero then to Kiwami 1 might be like a step backwards, and might make the game feel a bit more clunky than it would be otherwise.
Which people are gonna have to do anyway once they go from Kiwami 2 to Yakuza 3 remastered.
Nah, man, I'm feeling good for Kiwami 3.
We're actually gonna talk about that later, but let's see. What do you think about that, Cyrus?
Oh, I would agree that it's probably better to start with Kiwami 1. It drops you in the set, it centers you in the story, and like you said, it focuses on Kiryu as the main and only protagonist of the game, whereas Zero did a good job at fleshing out Majima, and honestly, from what I remember of Zero, it was mostly about Majima's backstory, and Kiryu was just kind of there to keep you reminded that it was a Yakuza game.
Well, it gives you that additional stuff you need to know about Kiryu's early days with Nishikiyama too, which he's also pretty prominent in Yakuza 1.
True, very true.
Yeah, I know you probably don't remember names, but I'm pretty sure you at least remember him.
Oh yeah, I do.
I think one of my favorite moments in Zero was like how there's that one, I can't remember his name, that one lead Yakuza guy who just kept like getting into fights with Kiryu and losing, and that was just amazing. The one on the motorbike, whatever his name is.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Was that Ryuji? No,
I don't remember names, to be honest.
Yeah.
You find him in the
well, again, it's all good. We don't really have to get into it and all that.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Speaking of, because Swaz was bringing up holding out for Kiwami 3. Well, it looks like I already got Swaz's perspective on it, because I was going to ask, do you really think Kiwami 3 will happen, and do you actually think it's necessary? So, go ahead and give me your thought process on that, Swaz.
So, his Yakuza 3 came on the PS3, right?
Yeah.
And then the Yakuza 1 and 2 are on the PS2. So, I think, because the PS5 is coming out now, so there's going to be another, 2-generational gap again, like there was from the PS2 to the PS4. And I'm not actually sure, but I think, Kiwami 1 and 2 and Yakuza 0 are quite successful. So, I don't see a reason why they wouldn't make Kiwami 3 on the PS5.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What about you, Cyrus?
Well, I will say that the generational gap is apparent, because, having played Kiwami 1 just recently and starting Kiwami 2, Kiwami 2 runs off the Yakuza 6 engine, I believe.
The Dragon engine.
Yeah, the Dragon engine. So, at its core, the gameplay is still the same, but it's quite an overhaul from going from Kiwami 1 to Kiwami 2, and then 3, 4, and 5 are just straight HD remasters, so it's going to run off that old engine again. So, getting thrown into the new gameplay style and then going back to the old gameplay style, I would say it would be nice to get a Kiwami 3, etc., just to keep that fluid gameplay. And I did like the gameplay in Kiwami 2 much smoother.
Honestly, giving my own personal opinion, I don't think it's gonna happen, and I don't think it's necessary. While I know that's most people's logic is that there's a 2-generation gap. The main reason they did the remasters of 3 and 5 was so that you can all play it all on one platform. And gameplay wise, it's mostly it's mostly the same between 3 and 4, and then 5 and 0 actually uses the same engine as well. So, in terms of them actually doing a whole remake using a new engine, I don't see that happening. Not gonna say it won't, but I really don't see it happening. I don't think it's actually necessary. If they were to put all of it onto, let's say they put it all onto, PlayStation 5. For the most part, most of the games on PS4 are playable on PS5. So you can still play the whole series that was released on PS4 on the PS5.
Right.
Yeah. So, you can hold out hope. I don't think it's going to happen. I know that they're already getting a lot of, requests to port the Kenzan and Ishin games, which are the ones that take place in the Edo and Meiji era, I think. And then on top of that, I'm sure they also want to create new games because they already released 7 in Japan, and it's just coming out over here in the US.
Is that the turn-based one?
Yes.
And how do you feel about it being turn-based?
Good segue there, because I was going to say the same thing. Personally, I am okay with it, but I would like to get your opinions on it, both from like a fan perspective as well as what you think from a business perspective. But let's start with Cyrus on that. Like, what do you think about them changing the battle system?
Well, I think it's a good initiative. Because, you never want to make the same thing for too long. You always want to try and do a little bit something to give the audience something new to look forward to. But, honestly, I don't know how I feel about it, to be honest. It could be good. As we know from most RPGs nowadays, turn-based systems have kind of fallen off the map.
Okay. Well, Persona and Dragon Quest shows that it's still fairly prominent. This is coming from someone who was not all that impressed with Dragon Quest 11.
Me neither.
But it was like widely acclaimed. And then Persona 5, which I think is a little overrated, but it's still a pretty good one. I know you've never played it, but what about you, Swaz?
I think it's an interesting direction, and I think it's quite funny because, especially it's the other the biggest RPG series, probably the most popular, the most well-known, like Final Fantasy, and they've been drifting in the opposite direction, away from turn-based and into more of a real-time action RPG type of style. Mm-hmm. And you just see all the fans complaining and they should go back to turn-based and that, and then seeing Yakuza basically do the opposite and going from action RPG or whatever to turn-based. Yeah, I think it's definitely a brave decision. I'm not sure if the Yakuza series really would lend itself very well to turn-based, because I feel a lot of the appeal to me was just the big one versus many brawls type thing. I guess would be quite an exciting turn-based, but I don't know. I'd have to try it before I really gave an opinion.
Now, from a business perspective, what do you think about it? Do you think that was a good idea? Do you think it was a terrible idea?
I'm not sure. I don't really know the Yakuza fan base very well, so I don't know how they would feel about it. I think change is good in general, like Cyrus said. We shouldn't because it'll just get stale after a while. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure if completely overhauling the combat and turning it into turn-based was the change that they should have done.
Okay. Well, why not? Is it just too wildly different?
I just think it makes it a lot more, relaxed, if that's the right word. Because it used to be the series, the combat was so hectic, and there was so much going on, and that's part of the appeal. It's craziness, and I think you lose some of that with turn-based.
Have you looked into it at all? Like, have you looked at how the battles go with it?
I just saw a trailer like when it first came out, but not really that, to be honest.
The joke trailer or the actual trailer?
I can't even remember.
Okay, well, let's swing that back to Cyrus. So what do you think about that as like from a business perspective? Do you think that was a good idea on their end? Was it too different?
Well, from a business aspect, it's an innovative choice. I wouldn't say it was a mistake. I mean, try again. I mean, really, when it comes down to the game industry, it's all about trial and error, find out what works. I agree with Swaz though. There is a level of simplicity and casual that comes with switching to a turn-based style system.
Mm-hmm.
So you're kind of losing that real action-y feel to the game by actually getting into fist fights with people.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose when it really comes down to it, it kind of depends on how they handle everything else, on whether or not it's still going to be good enough for the game, because with a different combat system, that's going to change the way the skills and stuff work. So, I don't know, diehard fans, longtime fans might not be okay with the change, which might hurt in a business sense, but at the same time, it's a different gameplay style that might be what draws in a new crowd.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. And in all honesty, any longtime hardcore fans of any series will have a problem with pretty much almost any change that you do to anything, right?
As gamers, we don't like change, but then we get mad when stuff doesn't change.
It's true.
We don't like change, but we get bored easily. So,
well, on both of your points,
I want them to change.
I wanted to change. I just didn't want that change.
On both of your points, I agree, and in all honesty, I think it's a smart move. Now, as a Yakuza fan, what I would say that I'm open to it, but I'm not as hardcore of a fan. And on top of that, we know how I love RPGs, anyways. So I've always considered Yakuza more of an action RPG. Which I know that most people don't classify it as such. I mean, it itself is classified as an action, open world adventure, but it's very RPG. It's very action RPG-ish. And I think well, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say I agree.
Yeah, and I think I actually think from a business perspective, it was a smart move, for multiple reasons. Number one, like you said, they've been doing the same combat for a while now, and as much fun as it is, if you play it like me, and I know you guys know how I play it, which is no upgrades, no level up nonsense, you kind of see what the issues are with the combat. Usually when you restrict yourself, you see what problems they have, and even as all the way up to Yakuza 5, the lock-on is awful.
Yeah.
Combat's fun, lock-on is awful. Sometimes, I don't know if you ever tried to use like the knuckles, the brass knuckles and stuff like that. It seems to go in a straight line. Like if the enemies move while you're trying to combo, you're still attacking in a straight line, like nobody moved or anything like that. If you try to use the lock-on with that, so it's not the greatest combat system by far. It's a lot of fun, but it's not the greatest. And they've been doing it. How many games is it now? Let's see. You have 7 main games. I don't know whether the samurai games will count for that, but I would guess that it does, just with the swords. Then you have the PSP games, which I'm sure none of you have ever played.
No.
How did you know?
Never released in the US. But the reason why I think is a good change, or a smart change from their end, is number one, when they made the April Fool's video, everyone loved it. Like, everyone was like, oh man, they should do that with Yakuza. And then suddenly when they announced, you know what, we actually are, and we just wanted to test the audience, suddenly everyone got mad.
What? I wasn't serious, man. I don't want that change. Even though I just said yesterday that I love that.
Yeah, and then here's the thing too, because we were just talking about it. Final Fantasy is kind of moving away from it, and Final Fantasy has always liked to change their battle system around, but their fans don't like it. But you have Persona, fans and Dragon Quest fans who are still always fighting for, man, look, turn-based still works, you know? And, you know, what Yakuza is only since Yakuza 0 gaining like a huge follower base, but still a really niche series. So still a lot of people that don't play it, especially because once they find out there's like 7 main games to go through. You know, I mean, Swaz, you started only 2 years ago, but you've played 3 of them, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is your reason for not starting on like 3, outside of waiting for Kiwami, which is just waiting for Kiwami 3, hopefully?
I think like it's a great series, but it's like each game is such a time sink, and like whenever I finish with one of the games, I just feel like a bit drained. I guess I just haven't really gone around to playing 3, especially if I know it's going to be like a massive step backwards, and like you don't have any of the styles, and just so I don't know.
Yeah. So basically, part of the reasons why, because you don't want to burn out, for one.
Yeah.
And another is because you're afraid that with the gameplay change, or like basically playing an older gameplay, that you might not like it, or you might not be able to invest in it.
Like, if I had, like, you know, unlimited time, then I would play it, but...
So goes the reason for every game. So is the reason for playing any game, right?
Yeah. So I think that there's other games I'm, like, going around to now, so I think if I get to a point where there's nothing that I really want to play, then I probably will get started on Yakuza 3, but I don't know when that's going to be.
So yeah, getting back to my main point though, you know, Persona and Dragon Quest fans show that there's still a demand for turn-based RPGs. And which has a bigger fan base, Yakuza or RPGs in general?
So RPGs, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So from a business perspective, even if let's say they lost some of their hardcore fan base, they gain much more from the RPG fan base, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I think. Like, that's why I think they would be. It was a smart move, if not a bit risky, or if not really risky. And on top of that, it's a new saga. So for most people who have not played the previous, you know, Kiryu saga, and there's this new protagonist, there's less fear going into it as well, right?
Right.
Yeah, because you don't have to have played all the other ones.
Right. So yeah, that's what I think with that. But shift gears a little bit. Let's go back to we were talking about, you know, of them possibly releasing Kiwami 3, but they're having, you know, more things lined up, either creating a new game, or the biggest demand is remastering games and localizing games that we in the US never got, which is Kenzan and Ishin. Not to mention the 2 PSP games too. You know, in my personal opinion, I think they're gonna do a spin-off collection like they have done. Like, you know, all the Yakuzas have had a trilogy collection, like the Origins collection, the remaster collection. So I think they're gonna do a spin-off collection, including Kenzan and Ishin, and possibly Dead Souls, because if they want to put that in, I think that's the only place to really put it in that will fit. And just call it the spin-off collection. But the problem with so far with what people are saying about why we're not going to get Ishin is that there is a part of the plot, kind of spoilers for anyone listening, but for you guys, I'm pretty sure you're not even going to remember by the time it gets there. But there's a part of the plot where Haruka's incarnation, she basically has to become a sex slave. And so people are saying they're having this doubt that it will happen because of what, you know, era we live in right now, where that's going to be really considered offensive and, you know, get a lot of criticism. But what do you guys think about that?
Hooray for censorship.
So you think they might censor it? I think it's actually part of the main plot.
Oh, well, I guess I don't know, like, how prominent it is and how it's done, but, like, you know, if it's done well, then I don't see any reason why they can't bring it over. But if it's, like, you know, really in your face, as the Japanese are wont to do, in my experience, in their games anyway, so yeah, I think there might be some fear about bringing it over.
What about you, Cyrus?
Oh, Well, that's a whole different political debate that I'm sure you don't want to get into, but honestly, I miss the days when games used to push the envelope and, delve into murky waters, if you will.
Right.
Because it was a video game, it's a work of fiction. It's not real. We can talk about stuff like that. I get why we don't talk about stuff like that, and I get why we prefer the censorship.
I'm not sure about prefer.
True. Well, some people prefer. But like I said, that's a whole other political debate that we don't need to get into right now. But I feel like the way that Yakuza would do it, knowing how grounded and realistic their story is, it could be quite a sensitive subject for a lot of people in a lot of parts of the world.
I think, Swaj, you're about to interject something?
I was going to say, because gaming is so much more popular now than it was back in the day. So now, games are as popular as movies and stuff. So they have to appeal to, a much wider group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And those wider group of people tend to be a bit more sensitive about things.
Of course.
Yeah, I agree. With that mainstream... With that mainstream attention, you have to follow the mainstream set of rules and appeal to everybody.
Real quick question then. Let's say they release this spin-off collection, which would be Kenzan, Ishin, and Dead Souls, which is a zombie apocalypse what-if situation game that comes after Yakuza 4. Sorry, Cyrus, are you about to say something?
No, I was laughing about... because I remember when Dead Souls came out.
I know some people say, let's forget about Dead Souls, but I don't think it was a bad game. It's just very, very, very casual shooter type game. Because if you go in there hoping you can headshot every zombie, the gunplay is not really set up for that. It's meant to be more casual. So if you go in there trying to more have fun with it, because you have abilities that will randomly give you headshots, but otherwise, you're just shooting all the time, So,
right.
Yeah. So, but then but that was the thing about Dead Souls is that I think they should still at least have it in a remaster, and I think having it within the collection of Kenzan and Ishin would make the most sense, as opposed to having it in a collection with the Black Panther games, which is the PSP Yakuza games, which have also never been localized. It makes more sense because it was a PS3 game. But anyways, let's say they release these three games as a collection, like they did with the remastered collection. Which ones would you play first? Or which one would you start off with?
One of the games is like a zombie apocalypse thing, but I'm not even familiar with the other two games.
Yeah, so you have Kenzan. That one was actually released on the PSP. I mean, not PSP, PS3. And that one that one you're basically Kiryu back in the Edo period, I think. He's actually Musashi, but he has to go undercover or into hiding, so to say. So he changes his name to Kiryu Kazumanosuke. But he's basically, he's supposed to be kind of Kiryu's ancestor type of thing. And then you have Ishin, which takes place during, I believe, the Meiji era, or maybe it was before that. But you are Ryoma Sakamoto, which is also Kiryu's something ancestor, sort of. And you basically infiltrate, or you join the Shinsengumi, trying to investigate the murder of his father. But they're both samurai-based games. And then you have Zombie Apocalypse, Dead Souls, which was called Of the End in Japan.
I'd probably play one of the samurai ones first, and then the zombie apocalypse one in the middle to kind of break it up, I think.
Well, which one would you, which samurai one would you start off with first, do you think?
I have no idea. Whichever one looks cooler on the poster.
I was gonna say Ishin was actually released on the PS4, whereas Kenzan was released on the PS3. PS3 one?
Yeah.
What about you, Cyrus?
Probably the same. I'd play it since there's no actual chronological order. I'd probably play it by release date, just so I played the earlier one first and then played the more updated one after, so I didn't feel like I was taking a step back in gameplay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, which is exactly what I thought you guys would say, because I would do the exact same, and I think a lot of people would do the exact same, and so I think honestly, this whole Ishin not possibly not getting localized because of this criticism of the whole Haruka thing isn't that big of an issue. And the reason why I think that, not just because, this is Japan back in the day, so it's not like it's a current event thing, which, most of the time when people complain, like, of the last, similar political, social issue, what games come to mind on that? Last of Us 2?
You just reminded me of that game called Manhunt on the PS2.
Mm-hmm. Manhunt? Okay.
Yeah, controversial.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Anything else?
Yeah, and also received a lot of censorship. I mean, we can't really forget one of the most controversial series since it, first came out, but Grand Theft Auto.
Grand Theft Auto. I knew you would say it.
Well, like I said, it's like one of the most controversial franchises on the market since its birth, so...
I mean, like, okay, so now, with all the games we've mentioned so far, what is the common thing among them when it comes to why these games get, very much criticized for how they portray things?
The violence.
Violence, okay.
Is what I usually see most commonly. The violence and who is on the receiving end of the violence, or how gratuitous the violence is, really.
Right.
Especially when you're talking about a game like Manhunt, it was, very gory and obscene, if you will.
Now, with these games, what's the general setting, though?
You mean like modern day?
Yeah, modern day,
modern
in some
era.
case, future. And the thing about Yakuza is that it's 1800s Japan, right?
Right.
So it's not like it's something that's today, which I think already will probably cut back a little bit on the criticism in that case. And another difference would be when, like, for most Yakuza fan base that want Ishin, they already know about this. You're not going to see them complaining about it. Now, if you were to start with someone who was new to the series and they were going to review the game, and think about it, you guys yourselves said that you probably would start with Kenzan, and then you might go into Dead Souls, and then you'll go into Ishin, right? So Ishin is
Probably.
like the last game you're going to get to. In reality, how many of these reviewers actually go through all three games? Exactly.
Well.
That's why I'm thinking any kind of criticism that happens for this will not be anything immediate. And by that time, if they're selling it as a collection, they would have made themselves.
Yeah.
That's my opinion of it. So I really don't think... Yeah, go ahead.
Just to go off what you said, though, real quick, I agree with you too. We do find that it's more, some of these more touchy subjects are more acceptable in a historical sense. Because, and believe me, I'm one for, I love, historical accuracy with fiction interjected, just, for pizzazz. Like Assassin's Creed, for instance.
Yeah.
Takes place around a lot of, actual historical events. And yeah, I'm not going to say Assassin's Creed 1 to really push the envelope on stuff like that. But again, because it's historically accurate, those things are deemed more, what's the word I'm looking for? Acceptable, I guess. Because of its historical accuracy rather than, oh my goodness, that's,
that's terrible.
Today, and we can't talk about stuff like that today.
I mean, what do you think about that, Swaz?
I agree. I think, I don't think we shy away from, historical accuracy in favor of, censorship. I'm opposed to censorship in general.
Right. As we all are,
I don't think it really comes from it. Yeah.
I think pretty much gamers in general, because the main people who really complain aren't really gamers. It's not something they do on a daily basis or anything like that. They don't play a lot of games. They've played some, but they don't play a lot. In what I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah. If Sega ever listens to this, I hope they realize it's really not a big issue that they have to worry about. I'm sure some people will take offense to it, but it's not going to be something that you'll see often enough that it will affect anything, and it'll probably be a year even after the release.
Yeah, and I mean, when it comes down to it, there's always going to be somebody that's going to take offense to something.
Yeah.
You can't please everybody.
Yeah. And it's already, people are already having a hard time going through the Yakuza series as is.
Maybe they need a little controversial spice.
Yeah.
Even bad publicity is still publicity.
Well, That's true too, though. So moving on to the last thing I want to talk about. So one of the most recent things that have come up in terms of the Yakuza series, in particular Yakuza Like a Dragon, is that it's also getting a dub.
Ooh.
Now, the thing is, as far as I'm aware, it's dual audio. So it's not only going to be dubbed. You have the option. But what do you think about that?
I think you know that I am like anti-dub in all of its forms.
Oh man.
Like, I feel like, things should be experienced like in the language that they were made.
Mm-hmm.
But like with subs, obviously, like, you should be able to read what's happening. But like, I feel like you lose a lot in like dubbing, and like in the most like what's the word? Like, in the most egregious of circumstances, like the plots can change and the characters can change with dubbing, even if they don't mean for it to.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just one of the reasons why I'm not a fan.
Right. I mean, I think I'm sure all of us actually would say that we prefer the original Japanese language, but this is optional though. Like, what do you think about them having the dub being an option? Or do you think it's not even necessary?
Their money elsewhere.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said they could spend all the money they're paying for voice actors and all that better elsewhere, is my opinion.
Okay. All right. What about you, Cyrus?
Oh boy. Well, unfortunately, I gotta be a little bit against Sloth on this one because I'm very pro dubbing.
Oh no!
I know.
It's bound to happen. It's bound to happen. We all disagree on something.
I'm very pro dubbing. Personally, for me, it's as a not whatever the native language might be speaker. It's an easier. I have an easier time experiencing it if I can understand it. As an option, I think it opens up their fan base a bit because there's probably some people out there, just like there's plenty of people out there that don't watch a movie because it's only subbed. It might look like a really good movie, but they don't want to quote unquote read the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, for an option, I wouldn't say it's a bad thing. I agree with Swaz. There is a lot of stuff that translates differently and comes across differently when you get into translating it into different languages.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't say it's a bad thing. As for the Yakuza series, personally, I would still play it subbed just because I appreciate the authenticity of it.
Yeah.
That way.
Because it's very rooted in Japanese culture.
Right. Like, you're not going to find, someone, a bunch of people walking around Kyoto all speaking English for no reason.
I mean, I'm lenient when it comes to dubs. I don't know if you guys ever watched Rurouni Kenshin. I know, actually, I'm pretty sure you all have. But have you ever watched it dubbed?
Yes.
Nope.
No. Okay. And yes, from Cyrus.
I've only watched it dubbed, in fact.
Well, do you know which dubbing you watched? Because surprisingly, a lot of people don't know this, but there were 2 dubbings for Rurouni Kenshin. I'm guessing you probably listened to the Media Blasters dubbing. The easiest way to tell is how they pronounce Batosai. If they pronounced it that way, then it's Media Blasters. It's the better dubbing. Whereas, do you remember or no?
I cannot say for sure. I might have watched them both for all I know because I watched it, way back when, and I actually just recently watched it not that long ago.
I can say this: I'm pretty lenient with dubs, and Media Blasters dub was good. Sony's was ear grating to me, to the point where I'm like, I can't listen to this anymore. But that's because I knew I had another option, So,
yeah.
I think if you heard the Sony dub, you probably would know that that's what you heard, because it doesn't. The pronunciations are pretty bad, and I know you. When we talked about Food Wars, by the way, I think both of you have watched Food Wars. When we talk about Food Wars,
a couple days ago,
yeah, you were very. You made a point about how you don't like the way they pronounce Megumi.
Ah, yes. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Dubs do bother me sometimes with the way they pronounce things. Like, you can definitely tell that person has probably never experienced any kind of Japanese pronunciations.
How was it pronounced?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that one hurt a lot, and every time they said it, I just cringed a little bit.
So how do they actually say it? I'm curious now.
They pronounce it like Megumi, when it should
Oh,
be pronounced
right.
like Megumi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, she's not Mega Man, stop it!
Well, so in my opinion, I think it's a good thing. Like Cyrus says, it opens doors to more fans who can get into the series. But I think one of the main things, and I've actually mentioned it on social media myself, when people talk about the fact that the fan base is criticizing the work put into dubbing. I've mentioned that I know people who are dyslexic, but I mean that in itself is pretty big, because we have a mutual friend who is like dyslexic, and that's a reason why he doesn't play the Yakuza games, because it's a lot of reading. It's a lot of reading. It's a lot of dialogue. And then the usual deaf fans, or not deaf. I'm sorry, blind fans, or well, that would be. Not fans. Blind gamers, which, by the way, that doesn't mean completely blind, because you can be considered classified legally blind, but you can still see. Just Yeah. And I know, because the reason why I mention that is because when I talk about blind gamers, people are just like, well, why are they playing games anyway? They can't see anything.
Yeah.
And there are actually some people who are completely blind and have played through games. I think just a few years ago, someone beat Ocarina of Time completely blind, based on just people telling him, where to go and from where he is and stuff like that.
Can't be any worse than trying to watch Twitch plays Ocarina of Time.
I think the issue with Yakuza specifically, with both of those points that you mentioned, is even if they do dub it, there's still like so much reading that you have to do.
Oh yeah, that's completely true.
Right? Like there's still so much text, even if like you can understand the actual like spoken dialogue. I'm not sure how helpful that would be.
Well, you know what? To be honest, though,
Point.
Even if they were to keep it, Japanese dialogue with no put no dubbing effort into it, most of the game is already going to be subtitled in English. So
Yeah.
in this case, that part of it doesn't change. So it's just more effort into putting dubbing into the voice lines. So you were saying already before that certain things get lost in translation or lost in context, but that's already going to happen when the game is being subtitled.
Well, I think like one more what I meant is when they actually like change the spoken dialogue, there's been cases where like it's almost like the script changes.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you're subbing it, I feel you're more forced to like go with a more literal translation of what's happening.
Uh-huh.
And like the biggest example that I always like to bring up, and I've probably brought up to you before, is like Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
And like so that when that was dubbed, they just like changed so much. And like when I found out, I was like, I think that was the thing that really put me off dubbing, is how much the characters changed with the dub.
Well, dubbing has changed quite a bit from back then to now. There a lot of dubbing companies are much more aware that people will compare it to the original, so they try to make it as authentic as possible. The Dragon Ball dub, I think you're talking about Ocean dubs, if I remember right, because one example that I assume might be the same dubbing is when it comes to Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z, is when Vegeta talks about Goku's father, right, who made the fake moon thing. Is that like an example? Yeah, so that's Ocean dub. So that's an older dub.
I think the quite bad as well.
What was that?
I think the Funimation dub was quite bad as well.
Oh yeah. Well, I can't really say because I don't know if I watch much of the Funimation dub. Funimation is kind of a mixed bag, honestly, when it comes to dubbing. I wonder if it's like a director who actually is behind it more than anything.
Most likely.
Yeah, because they usually are pretty authentic with their dubs. Like one of the more recent ones is Hioka. And then redubbed Initial D, which I know you haven't seen, Swaz. Have you seen that, Cyrus?
It's been quite a while, but yes.
Okay. Now, Initial D also had 2 dubs. Funimation was the good one. But the one they had before that, I think, was Tokyo Pop. And that one was pretty bad. Pretty bad dub. That was the one where they changed Ikatani's name to Iggy. Yeah. So, yeah. So, but that's the thing, though. That on Funimation was a good dub. But then it had, like, Detective Conan, which they changed to Case Closed because they were afraid of, like, other Conan-branded shows as a possible litigation. They changed it to called Case Closed. And then they Americanized all the characters, and that was weird. That one was really weird. Like, Shinichi Kudo became Jimmy Kudo, and Ran Mori became Rachel Moore. And like, why would you do that for a show like this? Funimation is weird. I don't know. Sometimes, most of the time, they seem to do really good dubs, and it's funny when I can recognize the voices from another show. Like for instance, Case Closed being an example. And then I listen to Initial D. I'm like, oh yeah, that's Rachel and Serena from Case Closed. But yeah, I think the team that works on the dubbing for Yakuza has been primarily the same team that has been working on doing all the subtitles for the Yakuza games. But I think the best example of how well they would come out with the dubbing is I know you guys know Bakamitai. The song,
what?
Bakamitai, the song.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you know that one, right, Cyrus?
Maybe.
It's a giant meme. It's been a giant meme for a while. If you don't know it, look it up. You'll find tons of meme results. They actually did a dubbing of that song, and if you look at the literal translation of the song and how they dubbed it, I think they did a pretty good job, to be honest. And dubbing songs can be pretty tough. But if you want to check something out, I would say look at that to give you an idea of how well they may do the dub. And even in the end, I guess I don't think any of us are going to use the dubbing option either way. But I know that Swaz was saying it's like a waste of resources, right?
Well, like, that's my very, like, huge opinion. I know a lot of people are pro dub.
Well, the Yakuza fan base, not so much. Oh, should mention too, Yakuza has had a dub before. The original PlayStation 2 of Yakuza 1 was dubbed. It was only dubbed though. There was no dual audio. And so
I remember
that probably is influential in why people are not too partial with a dub coming for Yakuza Like a Dragon. That one had a lot of good voice actors and actresses, but they weren't dubbed well. Other than Goro Majima being dubbed with Mark Hamill. Probably yeah. I mean, it honestly fits. And he actually did a pretty good job, but otherwise, everyone else was pretty meh. Yeah, but yeah, that's basically all I was going to bring up when it comes to the Yakuza discussion. There's a lot to talk about. I would like to have one where it's mainly like fan and plot talk, but that's going to be probably with different people, and who knows when that will happen. But I really just want to talk about it because the new game is coming out, and there's a lot of subjects coming up with Yakuza that we all just really already talked about. Any closing thoughts?
Can't wait for Kiwami 3.
Really believing in that, huh?
Yeah.
Have you, I think Kiwami 2 shares the same engine as Yakuza 6, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So, I think the previous engines were pretty close to that already, without the styles. I don't know, I mean, I don't think it's that bad. I, for one, I started with Yakuza 3, and I went back to Yakuza 1 and 2 original, not the Kiwamis. 1 was terrible to go back to. Camera and lock-on system was just... I mean, I already talked about how the lock-on isn't great, but in the original 1, it was awful. But 2 was bearable. Like, I was able to play through 2 just fine. So really, I don't think a jump back to Yakuza 3 from Kiwami 2 would be that bad, for the remaster at least. My opinion. But yeah.
Having played Kiwami and then going into Kiwami 2 not long after. It's definitely it's definitely a significant difference in the play, but I wouldn't say it breaks the game to have to go backwards.
Yeah. Yeah. So I really don't think it's gonna be that bad. Yeah, you do lose the styles, but were there styles in Yakuza Kiwami 2?
Yeah.
There were?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I guess that might be a loss for you, but I really don't think it's gonna be that bad, to be honest. Maybe it's like playing Devil May Cry 4 and then going back to 3.
Yeah, but 3 was the best anyway.
See? There you go.
Right. You're right.
And I agree with you. You know I'm not a Devil May Cry fan in the first place, but 3 was amazing. But yeah, I think that's the end of the podcast. I forget, Cyrus, did you have any closing thoughts?
Oh, no, not really. Except that everybody should play Yakuza because it's great. It's a great series.
Yeah. And I think, it's, probably should have said it earlier, but it's, everyone always assumes it's Japanese GTA. It's not at all.
No.
Not at all. And even I got that impression initially. I didn't even get to talk about that, but that was my bad. Thanks everyone for listening. That is it. Until next time, have a good one.